John, what up?
Darren, good to be with you again here.
Here we go, man.
Yeah.
Round two. We've done this before.
It's been a while, yeah, but it's good to be back.
Yeah, but not with video.
That's right. Now everybody can see our beautiful faces.
We're going higher level, right? Like with this technology. And
this is some next level digital stuff right here. Yeah.
And your first time actually here at our church.
Here at Seattle Revival Center. And actually, I've known about you guys forever, and we've been buddies for a long time. So it's fun to actually be here with you guys.
But wasn't it last year you were at Port Orchard Nazarene?
I was, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Do you know Jerry and those guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you did a church in the Seattle area last year.
Yes.
And you're doing a church this year in the Seattle area.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Northwest guy, so it's sort of my backyard. I can always drive up and have some fun with you guys.
So, are you getting any sort of feedback from the tribe? Like, John, you're selling out. Like, what are you doing? Like, hitting up churches?
Well, actually, I'm a bit of a church man. People don't realize that. People don't realize John Crowder even does Sunday mornings occasionally.
Really?
So, yeah, absolutely.
When you do Sunday mornings, where do you go? What does that look like?
When I do a Sunday morning, I am always on my best behavior. I'm a lot nicer than I am on YouTube usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like, do you guys do mega? Like, is it like a big kind of church where where you can kind of get in and get out without people being like,
oh, you mean attending churches?
Yeah.
I was saying, no, actually, people actually have me in to speak on Sunday mornings as well.
I thought the Crowders were now like,
But I do go sometimes to local churches in Portland, and we do tend to do slip in, slip out just because, I'm a bit of a celebrity in small niche markets and in the charismatic world. So
absolutely.
Yeah. We also have groups that we, like a kind of organic group of friends we get together with and worship a bit regularly in like in our homes and that kind of thing. But we also, we do churches and take our kids to youth group and that sort of thing. So
last time we talked, you were like doing this like sabbatical thing. Like you were trying to practice rest. And
yes,
I think you even went to like a silent kind of monastery where you did like an oath or vow of silence. Maybe that was part of that time. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I didn't quite take a vow. I'd hate to set myself up for failure in that way and then just start blabbing because I put myself under law all of a sudden.
Right.
But no, I've always been a big Thomas Merton fan. And when I first got into the church mystics, even that word, like, I didn't understand what are the mystics, and I realized there was this rich tradition of contemplative guys who loved the practice of the presence of God. So Merton was one of my favorites, and he's, for people who aren't familiar, Thomas Merton was this Trappist monk who a few decades ago was just very popular, and he wrote these amazing books. And so I went to his monastery in Louisville, Kentucky, and spent like 3 days of just silence, and it's amazing. Like you're hanging with the monks. They don't ask you if you're Catholic or not, so you can sneak in there and have communion with them as well. And like you're eating food, and like everybody's just eating silently. And man, everybody is just full on aware of the presence. They're just doing daily stuff, but they are tuned in. They're not just going by routine. They are very conscious of the presence of God. So it was a lot of fun. And I also, that year, I went to Mount Athos in Greece, which is like the center of Orthodox monasticism. And they don't do as many, like the vow of silence as much as the Catholics do, but very cool organic living, like off the grid, carrying stuff around with donkeys in these 1,000-year-old Byzantine monasteries with killer icons all over the walls and candles, and just praying all through the night. It was like, it was almost like a house of prayer that was just hammered, and these monks, they're aware as well. It's not like they're just going through the motions. It's just, they love the presence of God. So that was, I didn't mean to ramble on that long, but
that's awesome.
I did do that on my sabbatical last
so it was like
year,
this year-long kind of thing, right? Like where you were attempting to rest, and like when you look back at last year and like this year of rest, I think that's such a tricky conversation, this whole thing of rest. Like for me, like I struggle with it a lot, because I think a lot of the ways that people say like this is what rest looks like. Like if I try to practice rest the way that other people practice rest, I just feel frustrated.
Yeah.
So like it's always been this place of trying to discover what is my rest ethic going to look like. Just as far as like just valuing my temple and my family and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So for you, like with your work ethic, right? Where do you find rest? Like where do you feel like you're actually getting replenished and finding like, your color returning back to your skin?
That's a great question. I'd love to hear first, though, like you more expand on your experience on that before I give you the answer. Because
I see what you did here, John.
Flipping the tables a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for me, like my sanctuary of solitude has become LA Fitness.
Nice.
Right. So for me, I never would work out at the gym or anything.
Do you wear yoga pants or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, I got my own line.
Great.
So if people want to go onto my website, you can check out,
Stotts.
Yeah. It's like, it's inappropriate pastor wear, is what it is.
Yeah. We don't want to make anybody stumble.
Yeah, exactly. But like the thing about it was like going to the gym wasn't about like getting ripped. Like it was literally like my place of just zoning out of any sort of like work stuff or ministry stuff or relational stuff, and it gave me something to focus on as far as like sets, reps, all that kind of stuff. But honestly, I'd also just like cruise Instagram. I'd be watching different YouTube videos as far as how to do things right, and so I would spend probably, and then I'd hit up the sauna, the hot tub. So for me, it was just about really just enjoying myself for a period of time during the day, knowing that for the rest of the week, I'm gonna have to be very intentional with my focus, with my energy, with my bandwidth. And so, so it was literally like almost just having permission to hang out, and working out was like the excuse to go and do that, to the degree where if I felt like that time got robbed from me, I would feel angry. I was like, I feel like I got robbed, and so like that became part of my Monday, the day, it's funny too, because I'd run into people from the church and stuff, and I'd tell people in the church, like, you love me on Sunday because I don't have to see you on Monday, like I need this day to really just kind of like disappear. And so that's been something I still practice now, and something about the sauna as well, like something about just like torturing yourself that's just like, I feel rested, so that's kind of what I've been practicing for almost 2 years, I'd say.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I think physical exercise is so underappreciated at times for the centering aspect, because our bodies and our spirituality are connected. And you have people that get really weird with that concept, and they come up with all these spiritualized diets and sort of get superstitious, but there's just something about just getting centered and grounded. Now I'm currently in a bulking season right now, but I do love the way that exercise, it kind of flushes your head, especially at the beginning of the day, of just the importance of stuff that needs to be done. And in ministry, there's always some open-ended thing, project, situation, emergency that needs to be dealt with. So it just sort of centers you, and there is definitely a meditative, contemplative aspect of that. And if you look at these guys in monasteries, so often they're active monks. They're not just kneeling, praying all day long. They're baking bread or churning butter or whatever they're doing. There's a physicality to it. There's a manual labor aspect even to it. And I think that's healthy for everybody to do something physical. Paulie says, mind your own business, work with your hands. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be an attorney or whatever, but I think there is something to just simplicity in our life. And man, we're in such an age of rapid information and technology, and just to almost unplug and be Amish sounds very romantic to a lot of people, but I think in our daily lives there are ways we can do that. I think for me, one thing I do in the morning is I don't immediately reach for the phone. I think that's such a temptation, and that's messed my head up in years past, where you have that pressure of the ministry and you can lose yourself in that. And so I just lay there, just as simple as it is. I just will lay there, I guess people used to call that a devotional, but I'll just lay there and I'll just kind of listen and just meditate and just get centered for the day. before I let all the stuff that's going to explode from that phone dictate the pace of my day. So I think it's not just about pulling aside for times of rest, although I think that's good. I think it's like incorporating that rest in our daily active lifestyle. And I'm sure as a pastor, man, you're constantly being pulled on in ways that, are different from me. But yeah, I mean, there's that rhythm I'm sure that you could talk to in that sense.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I try to hold myself accountable for is finding those points in each day where I get to kind of disappear, and that can look a number of different ways. Sometimes I'll just walk out on the prop. We have this 7 acres here, that's where Seattle Bible Center is situated, and it's right on a green belt. So sometimes I'll just like walk out of the building, leave my phone in the office, and just walk the property, and just sometimes just sit like in the sun. So I think just finding that, if I can find it, at least it's funny. It's kind of like I want to practice smoke breaks, even though I no longer smoke. It's like I remember back in the day I used to work in a call center, and I remember I used to love the smoke break, and because you get outside and it's like this is like the church, it's like my church, and we'd sit out there and complain and talk, and like it was just like the fresh air, and like, but it was like by law, I have to take this break every 2 hours, every hour and a half, whatever it is now, Yeah. And so it's like I want to practice that. Like every 2 hours, I'm gonna get outside and not with a cigarette or an e-cigarette. Like I'm just gonna get out there and just get in the sun and just like, And so, but that's hard to do, And so that is kind of interesting. I like, at least with when you have a substance reminding you, like, hey, let's go rest outside. Let's get, and so it's totally. Like, I almost feel like we need something that can disrupt us. Maybe an app for that. I'm sure there's something available like that. But it's like, hey, it's funny. Even like I have an iWatch. Yeah. And it's like my iWatch reminds me to breathe. The breathe app, yeah. Sure. It's like this mindfulness kind of thing, and yet my iWatch is the very thing that's taking me out of rest continually. Like I was in a worship service recently, and I got an email from somebody in the church that was angry at me in the church. I can't believe this would happen at SRC. That message is popping right up on my wrist. I didn't ask for that. Yeah. I'm like, and so I took it off, and the only time I wear my iWatch now is when I'm jogging, or I want to know what my heart rate is. But it's so, I think that's like the tension right now is that they're trying to strap technology to us to always be nagging us and always kind of driving us but then they're trying to like also build within it this component of like we don't want to kill it, like realize this could kill you because it's just driving you insane, so now let's give you your moment of zen. It's like so I feel that tension, being a pastor, of like the reminders, the notifications, the urgency of feeling like I need to respond to something right now because somebody's offended. And so it's a great opportunity to kind of figure some of this stuff out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wouldn't it be nice if AI could just be, implanted into our brains and just, make all our decisions for us as well, and handle our daily chores and, just override our personalities entirely. Wouldn't that be absolutely the greatest thing? That's what I'm looking forward to.
I was thinking about what you're saying, because there's a form of rest that we find within our work. Yes. And so I even find, like, when we go on vacation to Hawaii or something, like if I can do some writing, I actually find a certain amount of rest in that. And I was going to ask you, when it comes to like your own theology for work, because one of the things I've always respected about you is just your output. I'm wondering, is there sometimes a tension that you see in like the finished work camp? Yeah. So because there's this declaration of it is finished. And then how does that work with our theology for work, or our motivation to be actually producing on the earth? Is there a tension there, or do you feel like finished work really complements and helps build a good theology for high output, creativity on the earth?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think there can be a tension. There doesn't have to be, but I think there's a tension in us. The tension is more in us sort of wrapping our heads around this stuff, because we see there are things that need to be done, that we don't just lay on the couch and, click our fingers and life magically happens.
Yeah.
And I think almost like sort of segueing from what we're talking about, the mindfulness, I think it's interesting, society, like with all of this technology, with these apps, that's the buzzword now, is mindfulness. Mm-hmm. And I think often what we see is just almost like a Buddhism aspect to it that's in the culture, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. I mean, meditation is in Buddhism, but it's we know as the source. There's the practice of the presence of God, mm-hmm. and I think that really this is the antidote to where we're at right now, because we can just so get. I mean, when we're talking about working and doing and output, we can be completely overwhelmed by. We're not a need motivated people at the mm-hmm. end of the day. We're presence person oriented people. And so I think that the more we as believers realize this, this mindfulness thing is something everybody's craving, the presence of God. And so often it's in their own sort of escaping into bubbles of rest. He's there. They may not realize it's him, but they realize we're created for something a bit more, and we're created for this wholeness and wholesomeness. And but I think there's a lot that has to do in terms of our output. The way I see it is we need to know that there is calling. There is something. Mm-hmm. Everybody's called to different things, and sometimes we can see somebody being really proficient in some type of career or whatever, and it's easy for us to compare ourselves mm-hmm. out of insecurities and lack of identity. So I think if we can get the identity thing right in the gospel, in this finished work revelation, then we're not running around like in this frenzy, frothing at trying to do all these things just to build identity.
Totally.
And I think especially how much in ministry, I mean, we've both seen
Absolutely.
Guys, they're building these empires, but they're little boys inside, know? And it's man, if we could be centered and know who we are, we enjoy our work, and it's fun. It doesn't mean every responsibility is something you want to get out of bed for in the morning, but you can find joy in it, and you're not always living in this duty-driven mentality. Mm-hmm. So it's not that we're slackers and like, well, I don't feel like it today, so I'm not gonna bathe. But there's still like there's joy. There's bliss in the midst of it. So yeah, I think there's something too, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, on what co-laboring really means. Talk to me about co-laboring, Darren.
Yeah. About like basically partnering with the Lord and what he wants to accomplish.
How do you see that?
Is that how you would?
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you see that?
Yeah.
I've got my thoughts. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about what you're talking about regarding calling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't know if we know really how to articulate what our call is. I think a lot of times people look at me and they're like, "Well, you're called to be a pastor." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Nah, I don't think so." Mm-hmm. Like I think that's the I've been honored with this title of being called a shepherd. This place of taking care of a group of people within the context here at Sierra Revival Center. So like, what does it look like to love God and then to love people and watch as that love transforms lives, Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I get to do, this wonderful opportunity. But I feel like when it comes to calling, I don't know if I'm able to really articulate that, mm-hmm. because I feel like there's so much in me that resonates with different things. I can watch a stand-up comedian, and there's just something in me that just starts to light up, where I feel like, man, I know, like there's something in me that wants, I went and actually tried it at an open mic night last year, mm-hmm. with my buddy, because there was something, I was just curious, and I feel like that there's something there that has to do with my call, but I can't really articulate what it is. There's something about music. I don't really lead worship anymore, but there's something about playing music, creating music, producing music, where like I just watched a documentary about Rick Rubin the other day, and as I was watching it, I was like, I just know that there's something there, and I'm sure the same thing would be true of you when you're engaging with different art and different things, where things that just light you up, it's a part of it's a part of who you are and what God has called you to do. So when I think of co-laboring with the Lord, I feel like the invitation for me is not to be put into this pastor box as far as this is what a pastor does, this is what a pastor looks like. But what it is it's for me to be invited into this place of exploring all of these things that the Lord has put inside of me that I enjoy, that lights me up, and to figure out how to engage with those things in such a way where the earth can be better because of my contribution. Like that's one of the things I tell my kids all the time, like the earth will be better because of you.
That's good.
Knowing that and that's where, when I think of co-laboring with the Lord, I feel like it's that place of going, like I'm working on a project with my kids right now, and when we're doing it together, there's all this joy. I think about when we built a tree fort on property that wasn't ours, so the city ended up tearing it down. It was a sad, and I knew that could be a risk. We were like building this tree fort in a green belt, right? Like but it was no regrets, right? Like we co-labored, me and my kids, to build this epic fort. Outward ducks are trying to mate and do their thing, and we're like like building a fortress.
Sure.
So that's what I'm thinking. I'm processing with you right now about this idea of taking all of these gifts, desires, things that light me up, knowing that the Father's put that in me, and being able to explore this stuff in such a way where hopefully it inspires other people to really truly live. And I think that's not something that I'm trying to do. That's not like a striving to do. Like I want to live. I want to be alive. I want to have this human experience.
Sure.
But I feel like it's been something that I've been invited. Like the Father's invited me. Like, hey, let's do stuff together, and and that's pastoral. Like, because through those expressions, people are experiencing the love of God, and they're being invited into that love journey. Yeah,
and I think right there, the gospel is a participation. I think when people hear us say it is finished, it's not like we just don't do anything. We are participants in this whole cornucopia of life, and just like you enjoy participating with your kids, and you're trying to draw their calling out of what do you want to do, what's in your heart. And I think so often we're asking God, what do you called me to do? And he's like, what's already in there? Like what you have these desires. I have the same thing. I love comedians. We share that, and I've toyed with the idea of doing something, but at the same time, you've heard me preach. It's like I can't help but that's who I am. It spills out. If I'm not goofing around, I don't feel like I'm not enjoying it. And I know God's getting bored. He doesn't want to be in the meeting. So you're the same way. I said today, we've never had a serious conversation. So, you're beaming with fun and joy. So I think there are these aspects.
This is probably the most serious conversation we've ever.
It probably is.
We're being very mature right now.
Yeah, we're being big boys.
Yeah, that's right.
Now. We've got our big boy pants on. Yeah. So I think when it comes to calling, so often here's how I say it is: what would you do if you could do anything in the world, and money was not even an issue on the table? If you could do anything, whether or not you got paid for it, you would do it anyway, and yet maybe get paid for it. Okay. Now it doesn't mean, I'd play Xbox all day long, but maybe there's something even in that what games are you, if you're doing first person shooter games, you shouldn't go shoot anybody, but there's still maybe something within there that, I was actually a worship leader myself.
Were you really?
You would never want to hear it.
Come on.
I'm not as good as my cousin David. And so we were,
on guitar or like solo, like with a mic, like come on people.
I was more like a freestyle rapper is what I was. Yeah.
New metal worship.
No, I played bass guitar actually,
really?
But I haven't touched it in 15 years.
And you would lead worship from the bass?
I would lead worship from the bass. Yeah. I could play around with other things. I'm old school
That's
renewal
awesome.
guy.
That's
so
incredible.
I was like Kevin Prosh
days. It's like
days.
Sting. Didn't Sting
He did, he did. But I was into, Kevin Prosh would have all these crazy instruments. Remember that?
Absolutely.
And so I bought the hammered dulcimers, and I was a hippie. I could grow hair back then. I had a Kevin Prosh do, and blowing your conch shell and all that. I was a flaming charismatic at one point. I mean, I probably should not broadcast this, but believe it or not, John Crowder sewed his own prayer banners at one point with fabric from Michael's and a bag to carry my my banners in.
Now, were these banners to sell, like on a product table, or were these banners that you would integrate as you?
I had no
led
product
worship?
table. Okay,
back when you make stuff just to enjoy it in the service.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should broadcast this. I'm having some doubts now. Yes, I've been through the whole gamut. Okay,
that's so awesome.
So I enjoyed worship and I enjoyed music, but I wasn't that great. Now I was actually pretty good at bass, but I couldn't hold a tune.
Yeah.
And so I would sit and I was trying to write music because I just wanted to write. I had this desire to like create.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting one day in a coffee shop and I'm just trying to write, and I got frustrated with trying to write music, and all of a sudden this poetry started coming out. Now you don't think of Crowder as the poet, but like but at the time, man, I was just this creativity just pouring out of me, and I'm writing, and then I just realized, man, I love writing. And so, that sort of morphed over the years, and I realized the Lord, there's a book in me. And then out of that, I never realized that I'd end up writing like 7 books. So I think I had this desire, this calling within me that I was, and for a season, it was music, but I think it was more trying to find its outlet in a sense that it maybe changed and shifted a little bit. So maybe you like Xbox, you're sitting there playing Xbox all day. It doesn't mean that's bad in itself, but maybe you've got a calling. There's something in there that, once it finds its outlet, there's a desire in you for something, and it's sort of discovering what's already in there, what the Lord's put in there. For somebody, it may be working on motorcycles or being a baker. I think we have this idea that a calling from God, if you're not a preacher or a worship leader, then it's not kingdom.
That's right.
And kingdom is, if you're a manufacturer, you're a fisherman, you're a policeman, you're a firefighter, that's kingdom, man. The kingdoms of this world have become, we're all participating in this. And it's not that one is better than another. And I think that's really critical for people to know, because I think sometimes they don't feel like it's spiritual, the thing that they want to do. Okay. And so it doesn't mean every desire we have is from the Lord, but that general, man, if I could just be in this. And I think with co-laboring, Paul said it's Christ so mightily works, his Spirit so mightily works within me, and it's him operating through us. It's still, we're participating, but we're empowered, we're driven by desire, and I think just so often we don't give him the credit for something because we just thought it was in our heart, something we wanted to do, but the two are synergizing very often.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about kind of switching gears. We hit on this last time when we did a podcast before, and I wanted to hit on kind of this whole thing of the doctrine of salvation, and what I've been thinking on just throughout even this weekend, this whole place of, okay, so when were you saved? 2,000 years ago, when Jesus died on the cross and resurrected and ascended and all of that, and this moment of conversion, this conversation of conversion, that moment of kind of awakening to the reality of what Christ has done. Yeah. And I'm trying to think back on my own story of real surrender, to the Lord. And one of the things I'm thinking on as you're talking of is like, yeah, we're included, right? Humanity was included on the cross and in the grave, and there needs to be the proclamation of this good news. But how do we? So what I'm wondering for you, John, is like when you're doing stuff in third world countries, or you're just like ministering to people out in the streets of Portland, or whatever this looks like, that moment when there's this discovery to this truth, and kind of the old school way of like the sinner's prayer of believe in your heart, confess with your mouth, and would you pray with me? What we're talking about this weekend is, at that moment isn't the moment of your salvation, but at that point there is this kind of this declaration where you're kind of coming into agreement with this revelation, and as I'm just kind of talking here, like I feel like when it comes to weight loss, which is probably one of those things that every year, January 1st, this is the year I'm going to lose all this weight. Then you get into February, March, and like, it was a great idea. Yeah. I think what really kind of like makes that successful is when we're able to really make some sort of commitment, where there's some sort of accountability and some sort of reminder of what So the question, John, is just like, in light of what Jesus has already done. Yeah. What do you think is like a good, just kind of best practice as far as being salt, being light, but also being perhaps that catalyzing agent whereby somebody can truly make that commitment. Because there can be kind of a, I realize it's not our commitment that saves us.
Sure.
And yet that it is a commitment that where we really begin to contrast that new reality. So would you mind just kind of speaking into that? And it's just been something I've been thinking through as far as finished work, but that and that salvation moment, but also kind of like what our role is as far as being salt and light and walking people through this process.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it is so important that we hammer out that T.F. Torrance, great theologian, he said, if one link in the chain of salvation is left up to me, then the entire chain is as weak as its weakest link. So I think we have to come at it really solid that our decision doesn't save us. It's we didn't invite him into our lives. He's brought us into his life. So we start from a place of union without even realizing it. John 14:20, he says, "In that day you will realize I am in the Father, and you are in me, and I'm in you." So a lot of times what we call getting saved is our realization of our union. But we don't always have a theology for that. And sort of what we get handed in the evangelical world is that's the moment Jesus jumped inside of you, or that's the moment. And it becomes like this transactional thing that we played a part in. But in breaking that down and bringing it back to the reality that it's thanks to Christ and him crucified that he is the bedrock of salvation. What he did, he's the savior of the world. If I lift it up, I'll draw all to myself. In saying that, it doesn't mean that we don't make a decision. It doesn't mean that we aren't called to repentance or to faith. It's just that we're putting those things in their proper place as byproducts of reality, as he has declared it. So it's not repent and believe so that you may be saved. It's Christ has done it. Therefore, let's change our mind. Therefore, let's trust. Therefore, let's live it out. And not just dip our toe in, but really live it out. Let's be possessed by this reality, because this is reality. And I think it gets us out of just this what day, when were you saved, what's the moment, write it down on a paper. And that's fine, but it can almost become this sentimental sort of superstitious thing, when in reality, this is a union that has always been here. He's always been for us. And there's a deep call, because there's a lot of people that, well, I've always been a Christian. I can't think of the moment I was saved, but I love Jesus and I live for Jesus. Am I not saved because I didn't have a lightning bolt moment? It's not about the when, it's about the who. And so, so I think coming at this from an inclusion perspective, that all are in him. In him we live and move and have our being. Paul said that to pagans. In him we live and move. With that perspective, if I see some, Joe on the street, I don't say pray this prayer so Jesus can save you. I say you realize God loves you. You're fully included. The disciples, they belonged before they believed.
That's right.
In fact, Jesus told them, he said, the kingdom of, and Pharisees and everybody who's listening, the kingdom of God is within you. Yeah.
He said that before the cross.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. So I say you're included. Therefore, let's wake up to this. Let's engage in this relationship, because the relationship is two ways. But fortunately, both sides of those are fully fulfilled in the God-man Jesus. So it's not like I can fail God, right? But he wants us. He wants us living our full best life. He wants us to succeed. It's not about disappointing him. It's like he hates sin because sin destroys us. So he wants us living like it and all this. Yeah, so I think it's just putting things in a different perspective, not truncating salvation down to this experience that we make happen, but rather we are experiencing something that he has solidified. And yes, there's a call to commitment and living it out and enjoying it. And
Yeah. So what do you think about the sinner's prayer?
I don't think it's a horrible thing in itself. I think, whatever, and the Lord will use anything despite the theology. I think there's a lot of different ways that it's engaged. I don't think it's like wrong. I think it's not this magical formula that gets you in, right? But whatever, just if you can get people relating directly to God rather than just listening to you. You know what? Hey, let's talk to him. You know,
Totally.
I think that's great. And it's okay to, hey, forgive me my sins. But confession is really, I think Capon said, it's dragging our sins into the light of Jesus so we can see they were forgiven all along.
Wow.
So even with like our evangelism campaigns and stuff, I kind of switched up how I did that. It wasn't like pray and Jesus will come. It was like, hey, I'm like preaching out of Romans 5 at a crusade, that everybody's in the last Adam. And so I'm like, because you're in, therefore, let's thank Jesus that he forgives us, and let's receive that, and let's enjoy that, and let's pray that, and now let's walk with him, and let's see how he wants us to live. So it's like, hey, you're already included. Rather than you get into my club, it's like, hey, guess what? You're already in. You didn't know you're in the club.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I think that like the sinner's prayer tends to be more for us than it is for God, right?
Yes.
And I think that sometimes it's helpful to have the moment of I do, even though he already said,
absolutely,
I do. He said it on the cross. I do, no matter what.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I feel like it, like ceremony is somewhat important just for our own kind of humanity and conscious process, as far as those defining moments whereby we're saying from this point forward it's going to contrast from the previous.
Yes.
And that's where I was trying. That was kind of the question behind the question was, for John, and how you're walking this out as far as what that looks like. It's funny. I was at a funeral. It's not funny. I was at a funeral, but I was at this funeral. And
callous man.
I know. Yeah. This pastor went into an altar call, and he'd been in ministry for years. It was one of the most awkward, probably even inappropriate altar calls I've ever heard, because somebody's died and
everyone get bad at a funeral,
grieving,
or if they say this person's gone to hell, or have you been one of them? They're not a believer.
I've never.
Like, how could you possibly do this? You are.
I was sitting there kind of like, are we really going to do this now? Like, if you ever want to see Uncle Ted again, but I was like, this guy's making it way more difficult than it needs to be. And, nobody responded. Yeah. But you know what it did is it gave me this great, confidence, to call people to Jesus. It's like the next day was Sunday, and I just went into the whole thing of if knowledge was everything, the Derek Sivers quote, I don't know if you've heard it, if knowledge was everything, we'd all be billionaires and have 6-pack abs, and so no, knowledge isn't everything. If we have Google, we can have anything,
It's a relationship. And
it's also just, it's about really taking responsibility for the knowledge that you have, that place of commitment. And so in light of that, if you would like to just say, hey, I'm ready. Mm-hmm. People just flood. All these people made decisions. And I felt like it was yes, Jesus already loved them. He already died for all of their sins. But as I've just been kind of processing through this weekend and this kind of place, this place of how do you receive this revelation and still have a desire to call people into relationship with Jesus, and what does that process look like?
And I think it should fire us up even more, because we realize, hey, these guys out here, they're not the spawn of Satan. They're family. Jesus, he did call the Pharisees, John 8, he's like, you're children of your father the devil. But you got to put that in context of the whole thing. In John chapter 1, it says he came to his own. And his own did not receive him. So they're living as under a foreign father, because they forgot the rock from which they were cut. So I tend to like Paul's Mars Hill approach of evangelism, where he's like, you're already in him we live and move and have our being. But you don't know who you're worshiping. You don't even know the source. You're worshiping the unknown. Let me tell you who he is. Let me tell you what you're really called to. And so I just think that there's this way that we can embrace people and bring them to that point of commitment and calling and relational, two-way relationality. But it's really, this should make evangelism so much easier, because we're taking that hurdle out of you're an outsider. Now he's made the outsiders insiders. How appealing is that to know that there's already family here, and we're not saying just ignore it and move on. We're saying this is what you're looking for, man. This is So I think it's how we view it, because when you say saved, unsaved, that can be messy language for some people, because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It touches on people's ideas of what hell is, or is God intentionally sending, or just there's just so much nuance in there. And so I think that I like to use really, if you're going to make a distinction, believer or unbeliever, do you believe? Do you realize that what he's already done? You know, because some of these words, they get loaded after a period of time. You know, because salvation can talk about what he's already done. But oftentimes it gets applied to our reception of it. As important as our reception of it is, we're receiving something that is done. Yeah, I think that's critical.
It's really good. It's really good. Yeah, I want to dive into, if this is all right, this conversation of, and from what this theological term of ultimate reconciliation. And what's interesting is that I've never actually heard anybody that believed in ultimate reconciliation even use that term. It tends to be a term only used by the critics of other ministers or other ministries. And so I've yet to be in a meeting or watch something on YouTube where it's like, I am an ultimate reconciliationist, you know. Now hear me roar. No. So I wanted to ask you about this idea of like, when it's all said and done, when everything's said and done, we find ourselves wherever we find ourselves, that we're gonna that there's this place of union that you had no, and I might be unfair with this, so I want you just kind of tap in, but when I think of ultimate reconciliation, on one hand, it seems incredibly hopeful, especially for relatives that maybe passed away that were just anti-Christ, showed up at the Thanksgiving table and you guys are idiots, you know? It would fill me with hope for, for someone in the family. On the other hand, I also wrestle with this idea of like forced union, and this picture of like, Andrea, at the end of the day, even if you chose to walk away from me, you will be with me forever. It would make me out to be kind of this creepy husband where no matter what you choose, like you will be in union with me for eternity. And so is there a difference between ultimate reconciliation and inclusion and some of the things that you've been diving into as far as this is what's been done for all of humanity? And does that mean at the end of the day that no matter what you choose, you will be in the family?
Yeah, great question. So personally, I don't believe in an ultimate future reconciliation. I believe it already happened 2,000 years ago. One died for all died. Our death to the old and entrance to the new happened in Jesus. However, like you said, it's if it's a forced relationship, it's not a forced relationship. We're free to reject. And you see in Revelation 21, you see the doors of heaven, of the New Jerusalem, are always open day and night. Now, there are those naughty people outside, and there is a place called outside the party. We're free to reject him, but we can't make him stop loving and including us. His arms are always open, and we're free to reject. But what do you see in that passage in Revelation 21? The Spirit and the bride say, come. And who are they talking to? Come drink freely of the waters of life. They're talking to those, the only other people in that passage are those outside the gates. C.S. Lewis said, the door of hell is locked from the inside. And so he's not forcing that relationality, and yet he's already bound himself to us in an irreversible way, that he's not giving up on us. You never see a point at which the good shepherd stopped seeking the lost sheep. And although it's evangelical suicide to even mention this, what do you do with verses like where Peter talks about Christ preaching to these souls in prison? I mean, what do you do with stuff like that? Now, I'm not saying I have it all figured out. I'm just saying that maybe there's a little more to this than what we've been handed here in the Western world. And I lean more towards the Orthodox perspective. And they say, and have said this, millions of believers all the way back for thousands of years have believed that heaven and hell are more like our human language to describe what it's like in the presence of God. You're going to love it or you're going to hate it, but you can't escape it. I mean, where can we go outside of a God who's everywhere? Wow. And so it's an interesting perspective. But where I sit in terms of reconciliation, I do believe that there is enough scriptural case for hope. I think God has this hope, but he's not forcing himself in that sense, because if there's not a willing yes on our side, is it really a relationship? And I think you can jump to this dogmatic universalism. Everybody's going to get in, and it becomes this logical, forced thing that's just not. It's not really relational. Mm-hmm. And so I think that you can make a strong scriptural case for hell, and in the sense of even the traditional, what we call traditional, it's not really old, but the American version. But you could also make a strong scriptural case for everybody, coming into salvation. I see it more as there's a hope, and it's okay to live with this tension. Mm-hmm. But we don't have to have this dogmatic assertion that I know how it's all going to happen, because, man, we just haven't been there. And we could say I had a visitation and, 90 minutes in hell and have a Hollywood movie about it or whatever. But in reality, like we see that God has a hope for the salvation of all men, it says. And so I think if he has this hope, then it's not just allowed. I think this is a commanded hope for us. Yeah. The hope for all of humanity. I mean, if we want people to fry in their own fat forever, guess where we're probably going, right? So that's, for me, I don't see a future reconciliation as this weird dogmatic universalist thing, but I think there's a hope. And I think it's okay and good and healthy to have that hope for all of humanity. And we'll see. At the end of the day, we're going to see. But it's not going to be a forced thing. It's going to be, we're going to want to be part. And time will be the tell.
Yeah. Hey, if it's okay to kind of go a little deeper with this. So we're studying Colossians right now, and we're just in the first chapter. And it talks about the centrality of Christ, and it says some pretty big things there in Colossians 1, and it talks about not just humanity, but it refers to all things. Yeah. And it refers to all things in the cosmos and on the earth. Yes. And it talks about him reconciling all things. And so my question, John, is what do you think about this idea of even heavenly bodies being reconciled? Even the idea of even demons being given an opportunity to repent and to take on their original,
have Satan over for tea one day.
Yeah. Do you think one day words like all, like, because we see all, like these words like all being used, and so what does all mean? Right. And even it is finished. What does that mean? Like these are really big. These are really big questions. Yeah. When it says every knee will bow, does that mean that even Lucifer will be like, I had it wrong all these years, like, whoops. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, you definitely have, man, there in Colossians, you've got this massive cosmic scope to the gospel, for sure. And I think if you look at the church fathers and some of the earlier patriarchs, I mean, you had guys like Origen who did seem to tend to believe this, that even demons or whatever could ultimately be reconciled.
Wow, he believed that, huh?
Yeah, and then you have others that would strongly disagree with him. So I think there's multiple trains of thought in there. I don't personally. It's not like a real critical thing to me. I wouldn't. Because I think some of this may be a little beyond our metaphysical pay grade. Because what actually makes up a spirit? Like we picture Satan like a personality with horns, and I'm not saying he isn't real, but like it may not be like a necessity for reconciliation in the way we think of it. I think we sort of anthropomorphize Satan and put him into like our, but who knows? I don't know. It's all I know is everything is gonna be set right. We are going to be happy with the end result. And I don't think that means sitting over and like roasting our relatives like s'mores over the fires of hell or whatever. But I do think that like we're gonna be happy with how this thing ends on a good note. And and it's okay to have hope for that. I don't think anybody, is gonna be crying if Satan doesn't make it in, and then if somehow he is more of a personality that did make it in. Well, that may be entertaining as well. Who knows? He seems to throw good parties in some cities, I guess. I don't know. But I don't know. It's a good question. I think it's an interesting question. I try to hesitate from being dogmatic on something like that.
Sure.
But at the same time, realizing the scope of the restoration of all things really is all things. So it kind of messes with the mind a bit, and also I think that there's also probably it stirs stuff up in the church, especially within some of the more mystic circles, where there's reports of people even converting demons, and
And then even the idea of in the same way that people will go to heaven in the spirit and engage in things in heaven, even the idea of being able to go to hell and to set the captives free and those kinds of things. So I've liberty to the captive, and taking like Isaiah 61 and applying that into different kinds of realms, and that we as sons of God, that we should be engaging in those greater things, right now. So I think that like, if we can really say like here's what our response, and I think that's actually part of the question is, what is our responsibility as sons of God here and now,
right?
And then what stuff do we need to just kind of trust the Lord with?
I think so, because I think especially when we start getting into like visionary experiences, it can be quite subjective, and it's like, man, I mean, I could, if that was a thing that I needed to imagine myself in hell and getting people out, then and if I thought, like, especially if I thought God was intentionally sending them there or whatever, like it wasn't their own self-destruction, then man, I should be laying on the ground doing that all day long. You know what I mean? Just forget feeding the kids.
We're propped up against a wall.
Yeah. Feed me Starbucks by intravenous. I've got to get these people out of hell. And I think we can take a bit of a burden on our shoulder that really rests on his shoulder. I think
it's like a warped matrix experience. Like,
I suppose it is. Yeah.
Whoa.
But man, who knows? Man, there's such there is a complexity, and there is a cloud of witnesses. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there for sure. I just think I think it's okay to keep it simple.
Yeah.
And we can trust the Lord with it. And let's minister to real people that are in front of us. I think that's a healthy thing to do, and really earth and incarnate this thing a bit. So
yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. Maybe evangelize your neighborhood first before the fourth layer of hell.
Or maybe just be nice to your family members, preach the gospel, if necessary, use words,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was going to ask you, so you did this whole video on marijuana.
Oh yeah.
What was the response to that? Because I know that you took your time, kind of being like, look, I know that some of you are going to listen to this and you're going to think that I'm being way too hard.
Yeah.
And then others of you are going to listen to this and you're going to be like, you're being way too free or loose with this.
Yeah.
And so, was there much of a response to that?
Oh yeah,
that whole, and especially because you're in Oregon and we're in Washington.
Sure.
So this is.
You smoked a bowl this morning, I'm sure.
Yeah. What? I don't know, dude.
You know what? It wasn't as controversial as I thought it would be. I think you definitely have people that, if you address any type of specific social issue, you're going to have the attaboys from certain people, and then the fury and rage from other people. So I try not to weigh in too much on real specifics, but when I do, I try to always bring it from a gospel perspective, because I don't want to like break those bridges of like the ability for somebody to receive the gospel over something that, as important as it may be, isn't like on par of rejecting the divinity of Jesus or something like that. It's just we need to live healthy, and Paul talked about healthy morality things, and so I think there was quite a bit of good feedback, and it was cool. As a lot of guys were like, hey, I've actually listened to you for years. I'm a total pothead. They wouldn't call themselves that, but they're like, I smoke every day.
Yeah.
And they're like, because I respect you, I'm going to actually listen through this and pray about it and meditate on it and reconsider my life choices. I thought that was really cool.
That is.
Because that's something we just don't see a lot of these days, is just humility in the church. To
totally.
realize I don't have everything figured out. I mean, you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting conversation. It's definitely something that's like with the whole GLBTQ kind of conversation, because these conversations are becoming like, they're really just beginning right now in a very intense way within the church.
Yeah.
And so how that can go. It can go one of two directions.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's definitely a responsibility right now within the church to be able to have articulate conversations.
Yes.
And being able to establish good biblical boundaries,
right,
in order to really direct our children in the trajectory of the church.
Yeah.
So it is an interesting thing, because you love people and you want to do right by people.
Yeah.
And at the same time, typically as generations progress, they tend to be a little bit more liberal and a little bit more free, and that's a little frightening looking at the state of the church right now in 2019 going into 2020, and just looking at like what's the trajectory of the church when here in Washington, Oregon, when it comes to things like the GLBTQ conversation, when it comes to the abortion conversation and a mother's right to choose. How dare we try to take that away, and these different kinds of things. And I know when it comes to the abortion conversation, you've been very outspoken with that. And so I don't know if it's a question here. I guess like the responsibility of mothers and fathers, because we're kind of like we're the mothers and fathers right now, and our responsibility to kind of frame a specific kind of trajectory for the church, and if we think it's going to be successful. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think what helps is not coming at things from this knee-jerk fundamentalism that they assume you're already gonna, as a Christian, he just wants to project his right-wing agenda on us or something. But there's an authenticity of love and care that you have, and you realize people are just legitimately confused in these areas, and they've had so much propaganda fed them, and so it's like, you're not even necessarily directly hitting the issue itself at the first. I wouldn't go up to somebody and just automatically have a conversation about their sexuality. That is several tiers down the road. We haven't even built a relationship yet where I have authority to speak into your life on something like that. Right. So I think as we do come into this real revelation of this gospel of inclusion and this gospel of real legitimate love, then I think it kind of breaks down some of these things where we have more. And even if we can agree to disagree in some areas, that's a better starting point than just wanting to kill each other. That's right. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. And so, accepting people where they're at, and yet God loves us enough that he doesn't keep us there. He's always challenging us to grow and to come into. Yeah, but I think we definitely we need to have a voice in these social areas, and I think it's just a real fine balance of always keeping the gospel first in it, because we can easily step off of that platform of grace into politics very easily. And so although we have strong opinions in certain areas and we know, hey, this is the right moral path to go according to scriptures, we can present that in the wrong spirit a lot of times in a way that's unnecessary, when really we could bring people in a way that the lines are clear, but people do see that fathering. They do see that real heart behind it is not just to hoist a morality program on them in itself.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's sort of something you've seen as well.
Yeah. No, I think what you're saying is as far as just the gospel coming first, like the good news of the gospel, so that we're being motivated by the gospel, not by a political agenda.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I absolutely agree with what you're talking about as far as how blurry those lines get.
Yeah.
And I've actually been really blessed by how forthright you've been with even like the pro-life conversation, with just let's just call it a life conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
And even just you sharing even how Lily, was arrested at one point for being part of an activist movement against that guy. I mean, not recently, but and so it is interesting how different conversations require a different amount of volume.
Yes, exactly.
Perhaps.
I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, absolutely. And you need to know the environment and who are you having the conversation with. I mean, we did a Ladyboy love tour to Thailand a few years ago, where we ministered to the Thailand Ladyboys, and I would imagine some of our team members still have some PTSD after that mission trip. That was one of the most dangerous we'd ever done. But it's hard for somebody to say that we don't care about the LGBT community. It's like, dude, have you been to Bangkok? Are you kidding me? Like,
that's awesome.
You have to wear a flak jacket to go, and people are getting shot with ping pong balls coming out of places I don't want to. It's just the weird trip. Okay. But it's like, man, when you go there, one thing that hit me was how broken and confused and exploited. So many people were in this area, and the thing that hit me was like the Lord has to pull this one off. I mean, this is not, you could feed Christians in here like sending infantrymen to the front lines of World War I, and it's just going to get chewed up. You can't. This is a big thing, and I think it's a big thing in front of the church today. And we have to realize we're going to need awakening. This is going to have to come from the inside out for people, and we have to keep love at the forefront. Love is not tolerance. It's not just a sickly, anemic tolerance where it's like anything goes, but it is a real love, and it is a real care and desire to see people living in a healthy place. And I don't see any other way.
Hey, inner healing. What I'm wondering is, do you see a possibility for there to be, because when I think of inner healing, I'm thinking of like some sort of process, in the same way that like a psychiatrist or a counselor could take somebody through a certain process where there's understanding, and that understanding brings truth and it brings freedom. And versus me taking you perhaps through a magical process where now a demon can't either be in you or on you because of that process. Or I mean certainly there can be a deliverance, that takes place. My question for you, John, is like, do you see that there could be kind of a gospel-centric form of inner healing, are you already seeing models of that in light of, because this whole like finished work kind of message is becoming actually pretty it's becoming more commonplace, like this whole idea of what Jesus has done, and
which is crazy, seeing how much it's taken off.
And so kind of, because there's like, you do have fun with a lot of inner healing stuff, and it's easy to have fun with that. And yet there's also a place where sometimes people need somebody to help them process.
Absolutely.
And to take some time in a way that we just can't do in a conference or in a message or even in a book. So what do you think about this whole idea of not maybe what it's been, but maybe what it could be?
And I think it's good for people to realize when they hear me pop off at inner healing, I don't speak from a place of naivety. I mean, I used to go through the 4-inch books multiple times. I'm so old school. I went through the cassette tape series. Awesome. For a decade. I used to train other people how to heal up their inner hags
while sewing praise banners.
Yes, that's right. and slapping the bass like Sting. So I would love to actually write a book called, and I've wanted to do this for years, called Inner Healed. I believe in inner healing. I just believe I'm healed. And so what I'm saying is we have to start from the finish line. Rather than having people, we'll go through these steps and we'll get you fixed. It starts from this place of you're whole. Let's discover what that wholeness looks like. You've already arrived. You're not lacking anything. You're not messed up. We're just retraining our mind. The mind is being renewed to the reality that it's already the mind of Christ. And so, yes, I absolutely want to see this, where we get a lot of this superstitious stuff out of the way. I mean, so many of these things have just been truncated to a list of make-believe demons that you just read off and renounce. I was going through one of these one time, because back in the day, you'd go through any little course that you could to get extra spiritual points, and so I was sitting there with this guy and his wife, and his superpowers, he'd look you in the eyeball, and then as you read down the list of make-believe demons that you're renouncing, he would just wait until you flinched, and if you made one little move, then he would have you redo that one. And so I'm going through, and it was getting bad, because I could see ahead of time. I'm looking down, and it's coming to the mocking spirit. Now, for starters, I know I have a mocking spirit, but you can't laugh when you're renouncing a mocking spirit.
Right. Major red flag.
And the fact that I'm not allowed to laugh just makes me want to laugh. It's like Saturday Night Live or something, and in a serious skit, you just, once they start laughing, you can't. So I get down and I renounce the mocking spirit. And he's like, whoa, hang on a minute. Whoa, we need to do that one over again.
You were like,
Yeah. And then the next one was something like bestiality. And then it was just out the window. I was like, I'm pretty sure I've never done that, but I'm laughing, but we don't really need to, but just in case, I did have a crush on Miss Piggy. So I think some of these things, they do get hokey and superstitious, or it's just, you're imagining, where was Jesus when, your dog was being kicked as a kid? It's like, well, Jesus was dying on the cross, dealing with his stuff. And so I just think there's a lot of, man, if we could get some of the hokey stuff out of the way, there's a very real place for counseling. We need good counseling, but healthy counseling where it's like people are learning the truth of their identity, not trying to get there, but unpackaging the reality. I think also there really is growth. To say that the work is finished, it doesn't mean we don't grow, we don't mature. Of course we grow, of course we mature, but it's not like digging for sin all the time. Like, right. People are told like we're an onion. You got to peel back this layer. You're not an onion. Scientifically proven. Plus, you had to dig up the whole onion patch. Okay, the whole thing was messed up. But there is a process of growth, and so like the way I say it is, it's like opening your Christmas presents. It's like, whoa, God's in there, a lot of glory in there. I'm better than I thought. We're going from glory to glory. And so, and a lot of times I think people, they just need a friend. They need somebody to talk to, explain what they're feeling. And they can say, hey, you know what? That's maybe a dumb way of thinking. Here's a better way of thinking. And the renewal of the mind is not this hard, treacherous thing. It's rainbow explosions of joy going off in your head when you realize, whoa, there's a better way of viewing reality here than this depressive way I was thinking before. So yeah, I would love to focus more on that at some point down the road myself personally. But we've seen a lot of people who already have been in counseling and doing it the old school way, who as they've gotten the gospel, I think it's good to lay down some of those tools for a while. Like if you were just breaking curses and looking for demons and all this, lay down that toolbox for a bit. Just dive into this gospel for a while. Yeah. And then maybe down the road, you can pick some of those things back up, but from a more baptized way. Yeah, because I mean, actually, a lot of what you do, a lot of what I see you doing is actually a form of inner healing. Oh, yeah. We draw a lot of crazy people. Yeah, I mean, as far as because what you're doing is you're taking these crazy statements that we've chosen to believe that aren't necessarily true. Yes. And then you're saying, actually, here's what the truth is. Here's what the Bible says, and then you get everyone laughing, and they laugh at it. It's like it's like it breaks the power of it. Yeah. And I mean, to me, that's like inner healing. I mean, I feel like this weekend's been like an inner healing conference with John Crowder, and like as far as just like. Not that you're healing people, but it's like you're massaging in like the benefits of like let's not forget any of the benefits of the benefits package, but you're opening up the benefits package. You're pointing out the things that we used to believe. You're pulling out the truth, and then you're just massaging it and getting everybody laughing about it, and it's breaking the power of those old defeater beliefs. Which would be a great segue, and maybe we can land it after this, but sure. I'd love to ask you because you're a guy who also does not take yourself seriously. And that's what I really have always liked about you. Even though we don't spend a lot of time together, I've always felt a real connection with you over this. And I think that has such power, the power, we've got to value joy and lightness as it just, and the humility and joy, because you're not taking yourself so seriously, it denudes, it just strips the power away from self-importance and so many of these serious issues in society. And as a guy who appreciates comedy, I probably should not admit this as a preacher, but you know how I roll. I love like the whole vibe of a comedy club where guys can they're making jokes even, because in a comedy club, everybody knows it's a joke. If we can't laugh about it, then we're taking it too seriously. And then you might really have an issue. When we strip away this self-importance and we can just laugh about stuff. Right. That's where this unity is going to happen in society. And I think with some of these, I don't know if you're of the same mind with humor and stuff, but I just think there's such a power in that, and in terms of breaking human pride, which is at the root of so many of our societal ills. Shoot, I remember being a kid
And it's the only time I've ever had a dream of Jesus. And in the dream, Jesus was just talking, and I was laughing uncontrollably. Like he was making me just laugh and laugh. I remember waking up, just tears coming out of my eyes. Nobody had ever made me laugh like that. And like, that was like my one and only encounter actually with Jesus.
Wow.
And I wonder if there was like an impartation there. I actually wonder if there was like an impartation from his heart to make people laugh and to enjoy people and to, and I think that's the biggest thing. Like, this word enjoy means to add joy to. Yeah. I feel like, man, that's part of like what I love to do, is to bring joy into environments, to bring joy to people.
Yeah.
And it helps us take ourselves less, like, I don't think of that consciously. Like, today I'm not going to take myself seriously.
Right. If you analyze it, you've lost it. Yeah.
Exactly.
You're having fun. Like, what if he gave us joy just to make us happy? Like, that was the purpose, right?
Yeah.
No utilitarian,
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I feel like, there's something about joy right now, right? Especially just look at what's happening with Netflix and all the comedy specials. Yeah. Dude, it used to be like that in the Blockbuster Video with horror movies. Yeah. Remember, like, horror movies just resonated with people, and like, you have these these low budget, horrible, trashy horror movies that people loved. Yeah. And now it's like that with comedy. It's like people are realizing that there's something that just resonates and comes alive, and we can just forget about everything and just
Society's
laugh.
Gotten so serious, so polarized. I mean, what better time to cheer people up?
Yeah. And it's the fruit. It's the fruit of the Spirit, man. It's like love, joy, and then look what that produces.
But it's not the same as happiness.
Right.
I've got the unhappy version of joy. Right. Deep down in my heart.
I'm going to extract the happiness out of your joy. Yeah. No, this has been great, John. Thank you so much for just creating this time, for us to sit down.
Absolutely. And thanks for letting us do the cross pollinating here with the Jesus trip and having both channels.
Every time you'd ask me a question, I'd be like, oh crap, I'm not used to that. But man, it was a lot of fun. And
it was a blast. Well, let's both tell people, because I know some people are watching on our platform and some are on yours, like how they can connect with the Supernaturalist podcast and all that. Just Seattle Revival Center.
Yeah, absolutely. So our church is Seattle Revival Center. People can follow us at seattlerevivalcenter.com, and it kind of hubs out from there. And then probably if you just go to on YouTube, Supernaturalist podcast show, everything will come up, or just put my name in, or darrenstott.com. Everything kind of hubs out from there as well.
Right. Yeah.
How about yourself, John? Like,
and our stuff. Our main website is thenewmystics.com, and we've got our Jesus Trip videos that we put out once a week. You can find it on YouTube. I'm on all the Facebook, Twitter.
How long have you been doing the Jesus Trip for?
Been doing the Jesus Trip for, oh my goodness, probably over 10 years now. Yeah.
Dude, you were one of the first, you were the pioneers of YouTube.
Yeah. There was actually a documentary done on me on cable television. It was Al Gore's station. It's owned by Al Jazeera now. And it was called The YouTube Prophet.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
It was actually more positive than most of the stuff the church had ever said about us. It was pretty fun.
Yeah. I mean, I love the Jesus Trip. Love just the whole introduction. That's a trip. The flying whale that like poops a rainbow or something. And then a guy comes out with a flute.
Yeah, I don't even know what all's going on in there. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Love what you're doing.
And love what you guys are doing here. So it's been a blast. And thanks for having me for the weekend. And been a fun show for sure.
Yeah, we'll go for it tonight.
Yeah.
And tomorrow morning, Sunday morning.
Absolutely.
John Crowder.
Sunday morning. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
All right, much love.
Take care, man.